Alright, hi guys. Welcome to Unit 2, Lesson 8, Congruent Figures. So we are going to be proving or showing that two figures are congruent using a coordinate plane. Okay, so first off, I relisted a lot of the terminology that we've talked about so far. Today's is congruent, which means equal or identical. Okay, if two figures are congruent, that means their sides are the same, their angles are the same, right? Like you could put one on top of the other and they would match up perfectly. Reflection, remember that means to flip or take a mirror image. To rotate, that means you're turning either clockwise or counterclockwise. Translation is a fancy word for a slide or to move. And then transformation is just the movement of a figure in general. So like all of these different, like these are different types of transformations, okay? Another thing that I think we need to review that we don't talk about enough is the quadrant names. So I have a coordinate plane up here. We've got the x-axis, we've got the y-axis, but we also need to focus on the quadrants because that can help us determine where a shape or a line or a point is on the coordinate plane. There's quadrant 1. That's where both values in the point are positive. Okay. Down here in quadrant 3, well, that's the opposite of, oops. Oh man, I messed up. Hold on. Quadrant 3, they should both be negative. Okay. Right? So like if you go to the left on the x-axis and down on the y-axis, you've got two negative values. In quadrant 2, we've gone left on the x-axis, which means we have a negative x value, but we're still in the positives for the y value. And I'm sorry if you can hear my dog barking in the background. And then down here in quadrant 4, well, now we are in the positives for the x value, but we've gone down for the y's, which that gives us a negative value. Okay, so that's something to think about as well. When we are notating the translations, when you first get to the lessons, it's going to ask for, it almost looks like it's going to ask for a coordinate pair, but the notation of a translation, which remember a translation is a slide, the first value that tells us how much change there was in the x coordinate, and then the y value tells us how much change there was in the y coordinate. And so it's a little tricky only because it looks just like a coordinate pair, okay? So just be aware of that as you're going through, especially like your practice and your quick check. But the video in this lesson does do a good job of explaining it, so keep that in mind as well. Make sure to go through the entire lesson. All right, we've got 3 examples set up for you. This first one is number 1 on your practice. Okay, so it says, the first step to determine that a rectangle in quadrant 3 is congruent to the rectangle in quadrant 1 was to rotate the first rectangle 90 degrees clockwise about the origin. What is the next step? So remember, here's quadrant 3. So we're starting with this orange rectangle. This is quadrant 1. We might as well label all of them. Quadrant 2, quadrant 4. We don't really need to worry about this guy today. But the first thing they're telling us is that we rotated this 90 degrees to get up here. Okay, 90-degree rotation. Well, now this one is in the same orientation as the green one, which is our final step. To get from here to here, we can't do a reflection, right? Because that doesn't get us into the exact same spot. But we can slide it or translate it. So to do that, what we would want to do, we could focus on just like one point at a time. So if I focus on that one, what I'm trying to figure out is how much did I move it? So from here, this one is at 1 and then negative, 1 on the y value. But then let's see, 1, 2, oh, I can't even see myself. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this first point is at -4, +1. So let's just focus on our x value first, okay? Our x value, we went from -4, we can get back to 0, that's 4 spaces. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we translated this 9 spaces to the right, so that would be our first value. And then for our y value, we need to see, well, how far did we go up? We were at 1, right? Here we are at the 1, and then we went up 1, 2, 3. So our final answer would look like that, 9, 3. Okay? So it looks like a coordinate pair, but that's describing the translation that happened after the rotation. Okay? So hopefully you can mimic that on the next couple. And as always, like, if you need help, just let me know. This next one, number 4 on the practice, what is the sequence of transformations needed to move triangle ABC to triangle EGH to show the triangles are congruent? So for this one, we really need to, you need to kind of visualize one more step. They left a step out, okay? And that's what I feel like personally, just kind of like, it does make it a little confusing, but just know, like right now, we would either have to do like some kind of big rotation, or we could do a reflection. If I reflect this up here, you might be able to visualize that like this would be in the same orientation as this. So if I do a reflection across the x-axis. So if I do that, and if you remember from past lessons, that means our y value is changing, but our x value stays the same. So here, point C, that's at -1, -5, but that means I would come up from -1 on my x up to +5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Just making sure I had that right. Yep. Okay, and then I could label it, especially since I'm not using actual graph paper, just to make sure. Then this next one for point B, our x value is -4, our y value is -5. Our x value stays the same because we're staying at the -4, but then we're going to go up to +5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So notice now, look at that. They're in the same position as this triangle over here. So let's see, this would be point -4, +5. And then for A, our x value is at -6. Y is going to go up to +2. Okay, so that would be -6, 2. All right. So now notice they're in the same position, which is nice because now we can do the translation or the slide. We can move it over to the right and up a little bit. All right, so that's what we're going to focus on. So one thing, I'm going to focus on this point here. Okay, so for my x value, we were at -6. Well, to get back to 0, that's 6 over, and then we go 2 more. So then our translation would be 8 to the right, and then we only went up 1. Okay, so 8, 1. This would be your final answer, and this is probably, I would say, is the most, I don't know, maybe funny part of your practice is that it doesn't ask for this first step, but you do still have to do it, okay, or to recognize, first I have to reflect, then I translate, okay? So this right here is what would get you a correct answer on that one, all right? And then the final one, number 3, and your quick check in this lesson is actually a little easier than your practice. For this one, you just have to say what happened. And so, and I apparently forgot to write down the actual question. Sorry about that. But it said, describe the series of transformations that have occurred to move the triangle in quadrant 4 to the triangle in quadrant 2. Okay? To show that the triangles are congruent. So in this case, we're just listing the events that happened. So this is quadrant 4. We've got quadrant 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to start in quadrant 4, moving our way to quadrant 2. Well, the first thing that I notice is that, like, this triangle, in my brain, it makes sense that it's like, oh, it was upside down. And then if it went into the next quadrant, that means it was a 90-degree turn clockwise, which a turn is a rotation. So that's the first thing that happened. Then after that, it did a slide. It slid over here, which we know as a translation. So this is the list that you're looking for: rotation, then translation. For me, on my quick check that I have on my screen, that's answer number 1, okay, or A, or whatever you want to call it. But hang in there. Like I said, I feel like the quick check is easier than the practice, but if you need any support, you just let me know.